Hey everyone, Zach here. Today I'm going to walk through how you can use Ansible Vault for your local development of Ansible playbooks, and then also talk about how I integrate that into my more production workflows, leveraging Ansible Automation Platform. So to do this, I'm going to use a pretty basic Ansible playbook where I just have a couple of tasks. The first one here you'll see is debugging a couple of variables that are Ansible variables, and there's some failsafe here in case they're not defined. If I scroll down, pretty similar debug statement here. The main difference is that I'm actually looking up and sourcing the information from environment variables. That's going to come more into play when I talk about the custom credential types in Ansible Automation Platform. But for now, just know that we're basically trying to print out some sensitive data, which we wouldn't do in a real workflow, but for demo purposes, the idea is where are these variables coming from? So to start, I'll go ahead and just run the playbook as is and give you an idea of what the output looks like. So ultimately we want to get to where these undefined values are actually sourced from Ansible variables. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and export a secret which points at a Vault password file. So this environment variable, Ansible Vault _ password file, points at a Vault pass, just plain file that has a secret in it. And that secret's going to be used to encrypt and decrypt the vaulted file. So when I run my playbook and I point at a vaulted file, it'll know out of the box to go, hey, let me pull that secret from there to decrypt it. And similarly, like when I save it after I'm done editing, I can also use that key to encrypt the file. So let me export that file. If I don't export that, what it'll do is when I say Ansible Vault create, so I'm going to create my secrets.yaml in demo/vars. If I didn't provide that file, it would have prompted me a password at runtime, which is totally fine, but it can get old after a while. So I like to set that environment variable. You can also set it in your ansible.config. But I note on my blog a couple of drawbacks to doing that is that if you do check your ansible.config in, and then it's in the project when you try to run the job template in the Ansible Automation Platform, you may have a broken reference. So I just like to use an environment variable locally, and then I'll explain kind of how I use it in AAP as well. So in this file, this is just a plain YAML file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to define my variables. So I'll say demo user and then vault demo password, and I'll say secret. Right, and so of course you wouldn't want to have these exposed in a real world situation. So let me go ahead and save that file. And what you'll notice if I actually go over here and open the file, it's encrypted, right? So this is the encrypted information that represents those two variables. And there's a couple of ways I can use them when I actually go to run my Vault demo playbook. So if I come back to the command line and I go to my Ansible Vault or Ansible playbooks where I do the Vault demo, I can pass this as a reference to demos/vars/secrets.yaml. And when it runs, you'll notice that because I defined those two variables, we now see them populated in our print statement. Of course, again, would never want to print out our password, but just to give you an idea of how those can be supplied. So that's one way of doing it. And again, because I referenced a vaulted file with my -e and the @ symbol representing that it's a file, if I wouldn't have had my environment variable configured for where the vault password was, it would have prompted me. So again, that's just kind of a nice thing about having the vault password file somewhere. And if you do plan on or have taken the Ansible certifications provided by Red Hat, it's actually a component of the Ansible Automation Platform, is understanding kind of how to leverage the vault password file to simplify the encryption and decryption. So this is one way to pass the vault file in locally, and I actually do kind of like to do this when I'm testing things out locally, and I plan on using a custom credential type in the platform, because then my playbook doesn't actually have a hard reference to the file itself. The other way you could do that, so if I back out of my extra vars parameter, is I could actually modify the playbook, and if I use the vars files keyword and I say vars/secrets.yaml, and I'm using the relative reference to the file because the playbook is in the demos directory. And if I go ahead and run this, I should get the same result, right? So you'll see here, I got my two secrets from the file. I wasn't prompted again, because I have that environment variable set, and it was able to decrypt the vars file that was vaulted. So I'm going to go ahead and back out of this because, again, when I do things locally, I tend to actually not reference the vars file unless I'm going to use it in my production workflow. So first off, what I'll do is I'll leave it in there and I'll commit this change where I reference secrets as a vars file, and I'll go ahead and push that up. And then what I'll do is I'll come over to the controller itself, and I've got a job template which is referencing this Linux management project. So what I first need to do is go over here and sync it to get that latest change. And since I've created a reference to the vars file itself, if I launch this without providing a vault credential, it would not work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit my job template, and I'm going to click on these credentials, and I'm going to find the vault type. So this is a built-in credential type, and I've created a credential already that has the same password that's in my .vault_pass locally, and it's going to be the credential for my playbook in Ansible Automation Platform as well. So if I save this and I go ahead and launch this job template, we should get the same output that we did locally. So let me go ahead and refresh this output, and you'll see, of course, our environment variables are still undefined. That's okay. But we got our demo user and secret, and it was able to decrypt the file in my project because I supplied that vault credential to the job template itself. So now let's say, what if I don't even want to use the vars file at all? I was just using it to mimic how a custom credential works in AAP. So the way that I would update this to work in that scenario is I'd go ahead and remove this vars file, and I'll save that change. And what I could also do is actually, just to note how I would be running this locally, is if I was doing it where I removed it from the file itself, but I wanted to mimic that custom credential type, I would make sure that I'm always doing my reference like this at the command line to mimic the behavior of a custom credential injecting those values into my run. So what I can do is, let me back out of this, and I'm going to go ahead and commit that change. So remove hard reference to vaulted file. And again, I need to come back to Ansible Automation Platform, and I'll go back to, if I go to the demos and I go to my job template, I'm going to go ahead and edit this, and I'm going to remove that credential because I no longer need the demo vault credential, as I'm not referencing that hard linked file, right? So I don't need to decrypt anything. And then if I go to my project, let me go ahead and sync Linux management, which is my repo that has this playbook. And if I go back to my jobs, the demo using Ansible Vault, and I go to the job template itself, you'll see that, so we've refreshed it, we no longer have the hard reference, and let me go ahead and launch it. So what we should expect here actually is coming back to, we should have that undefined output, right? Because we no longer have the hard reference, and so we don't have a source for our variables. Now the last piece of this is, if I wanted to create a custom credential type that injects those secrets into my playbook, this to me is the most secure way of doing things in the platform itself. So I'm giving you an idea. I've already created the custom credential type, and this is the input configuration and the injector configuration. So two separate things here. The input being, what is a user allowed to input when they create a credential of this type? And of course, I'm just creating a Vault demo type, so this isn't necessarily useful for any particular use case. But I have two fields, my Vault demo username and my Vault demo password. And there's some other properties here I can use to basically modify how this is exposed to a user when they go to create a credential. And if I scroll down, I'm saying they're both required for this example. I'm marking the password as secret. And the second piece, which is also very important, is how is this injected into the run itself? And you'll notice that there's a few different things you can do here. So you can inject them as environment variables. You can also inject them as extra variables, which is basically what I was doing by passing the file by reference on the command line. I was injecting the values in the file as extra variables. So that's this second section here. The nice thing with a custom credential type is you can do both, right? So if you have a collection that you're depending on that actually will try to source sensitive information from environment variables, you would want to inject those particular environment variables into your playbook run, right? So in this case, I'm doing vault demo user and vault demo password, but I'm also passing the extra variables because why not? I'm just being kind of comprehensive in this particular example. So if I then went to my credentials and I clicked add and I went to, let me see, the vault demo credential type, you'll notice it prompts me for that username and password. I've already created a credential of this type. So now what I need to do is I need to attach it to my job template. So let me go back to my job template and click edit. Oh, sorry, this is the project. Let me go to the job template itself. Click edit, and we'll come back to this credentials. You notice me like, where is my credentials? Not here. Always remember you got to select your type. So for me, it is the vault demo credential type, and looks like I actually haven't created my vault demo credential type credential. So let me go ahead and create one then, because we can go to vault demo credential type, and this is kind of a good example. Vault demo credential is what I'll name it. For username, I'll give it demo user just to match what we were doing locally, and then I'll use the same password, so secret, and I'll save that. So now I can see there's no job templates using this at this time, and I can go to job templates that are related to the project, demo using Ansible. Let me click on the pencil icon to edit it. And if I come back and I select my vault demo credential type, I now have that option to select my vault demo credential, and I should be able to save this. And if I launch this one, what should happen here is I actually should get both outputs because I injected not only as an Ansible variable or an extra variable, I also injected the environment variables. So you'll notice here in my output, I have both, right? So for me, this is how I like to kind of keep my local development and production development in sync. By using a custom credential type in Ansible automation platform, I can get the kind of ultra security of having them encrypted in the database. And I can even, if I wanted to, if I came to my vault demo credential, let's see, if I came here, I could actually have this value. If I refresh this, if I click on this key, I could have this reference a secret in a third-party like enterprise vault solution, right? So this becomes really powerful where at runtime, it's actually pulling from a vault solution as opposed to storing it encrypted in the Ansible database. So kind of extra kind of bonus security you get by leveraging custom credentials. And then locally, I don't have to really modify my workflow because I just keep a vaulted file locally that I pass in at reference when I'm testing. And it runs the same as it would run in the platform. The only difference being, as opposed to me injecting a file on the command line, it's getting injected from a custom credential type. So I hope you found this demonstration useful. This is just my personal workflow and kind of how I go about leveraging Vault locally and kind of custom credential types in the platform itself. There's a lot you can do with custom credential types. So I do plan on having a post in the future where I go more into detail on how do I design custom credential types, because in theory they would match up to the collections that you're using. But for now, I hope that was useful for you. If you have any other suggestions on how Ansible Vault can be used, I'd love to hear them. Thanks for listening.